Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. If you don't know me, I'm Bobby Klink. I'm the founder here at BobbyKlink.com. And I wanted to jump in here for episode 2 of my new series called Email Fails. Now, this is not about me making fun of particular emails. I have a lot of fun doing that. A lot of times I get people who do ridiculous things and I get ridiculous pitches. But what I'm talking about here in Email Fails are the mistakes that a lot of online entrepreneurs make when it comes to online marketing with email. It could be weekly emails, it could be promo emails, but that's what we're talking about. And in this week's episode, I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes I see people make with their weekly emails. Now, maybe you call them newsletters, but I'm going to try to get you to stop calling them newsletters, because the big mistake that a lot of people are making is that their weekly emails are all about content. It's all about them regurgitating the content or repeating the content that's in their weekly blog post or their podcast or their video show or whatever it is. Effectively, a lot of people treat their weekly email as a summary of their other content. And that is a huge mistake, because fundamentally, people don't need more content. People have so much content already that the last thing they need is to get more. And more importantly, if they want your content, they can go read it on your blog, listen to your podcast, watch your video show. There is no reason to simply repeat it. And if that's what you do in your weekly email, what you're training people to see is that your emails are not something interesting in their own right. They're simply a repetition of something else that they could get elsewhere. What that does is it trains them not to open your emails over the long term. And that's a mistake, because you want people to be opening your emails on a regular basis and get used to wanting to open them and get to the point that they feel like they're getting something extra by opening your emails, by interacting with your emails, that your emails are kind of an event. And so what I suggest to people is that instead of making your emails a summary, a repetition of the content you're already creating and that you've already published, that instead your emails should be story-based. It should be a story from your life that lets them connect with you. This is a huge shift, but the takeaway that I want you to have is this: you attract people to your world with content, but you nurture them with you. When you get someone on your list, your goal is to take them from a relatively cold lead and turn them into a raving fan. The way you do that is by building up the know, like, and trust factor. And yes, theoretically, you could build up the trust factor by giving them content, but it doesn't really help with the know and like. If you want people to get to know you and get to like you, the quickest way to do that is to let them into your life, into your world. That's why my weekly emails are kind of crazy. They're usually funny stories or sometimes emotional stories, but they're an event. There's something that is separate from my content. And before you start saying, well, but I've got to send people to my blog post or I've got to send people to my podcast, you do that too. Each one of my weekly emails, I have at the end, I invite them to listen to my podcast. I tell them what it's about and I give them a couple of calls to action. But that comes after I've already shared some kind of story that has a lesson, that has some value, that maybe made them chuckle. What that does, sharing that story lets them get to know me, but it also builds the connection between me and them. Because my subscribers, when they hear or see me tell a story that they can relate with, because they relate to something I did or something that I've experienced, guess what? They feel connected to me. And it could be something as small as me sharing that I went to the Bahamas and saying that I stayed at the Atlantis Hotel. And they're like, oh, I stayed there too. Literally, you don't realize it, but we as humans are looking for connections with people. And the more that we feel connected with someone, the more likely we are going to be to buy from them, to do business with them, to just become someone who is an advocate or a promoter for that person, if nothing else. And you can do that with your email list by sharing stories. Like I said, I did it right now on this live by talking about the fact that I was at the Bahamas and stayed at the Atlantis. If you've stayed there, now you feel connected to me. But I've done it in other ways because I, for example, talk about beer in my emails. And so people who like beer feel connected with me because I talk about beer. I've talked about this one specific beer, Sweet Baby Jesus, and now I think it's an abomination. The funny thing is, whether people like that beer or don't like that beer, or like the idea of that beer or don't like the idea of that beer, if they are a beer person and they hear me tell that story, they feel connected to me because they have something in common. So the big mistake, the big failing that a lot of people have is they're not doing that. They're not using email as a way to build connections, build a kind of a common ground between them and their subscribers. So if I can give you one big takeaway from today, when you're writing your weekly emails to your list, don't treat it as a newsletter where you're simply kind of regurgitating and repeating the content that you've already put out that week. Nobody wants that, and that's not going to do you any good. Instead, treat your weekly emails as a chance to connect with people by telling them stories, by letting them into your world and into your life, and then say at the end, and here's my stuff. If you want to listen to this week's podcast, etc. Now, the best way to do it is make the story somehow relate to the lesson in your weekly content and then make that pivot. But the point is that by focusing on the story and focusing on these little vignettes for your life, people will kind of get to the point that they know you, they like you, and they trust you, and then they'll buy from you. So going forward, I want you to focus on stories in your email, not content, not just repeating what's already in your weekly content. If you'll make that one shift, your email will be hugely successful compared to where it is now. Now, if you want to know what you could be improving, how you could be making your emails better, I've got a free quiz that you can go and take, and you can figure out and learn a lot about kind of how to improve your email marketing. Head over to bobbyklink.com/email quiz. Again, bobbyklink.com/email quiz. You can take the quiz, you can learn about it, you can get a customized report, and you'll be on your path to improving your email marketing. That's it for this week. I'll see you again next week for another one of the big mistakes that people are making with email. Talk to you later.